Hello everyone, we are going to talk about other qualitative methods today. We will start with focus group. Focus group is very similar to interview. It's essentially a focused group interview. You basically have the similar type of protocol and you guide a group discussion instead of one-on-one conversation. And the discussion is recorded so it can be reviewed and transcribed. Here you can use audio recording or video recording. Depends on how comfortable your participants are. And you analyze the data for similar ideas, themes, and use a lot by marketers, advertisers, or peer professionals. Before you start, you need to define the problem you want to study with focus group. What factors are associated, let's say, with an unhealthy lifestyle or social media use, whatever you're interested in. And if you see the similarity between those questions here, they are all research questions. They are not hypotheses. If you remember, we talked about this a few weeks back. When you're doing quantitative research, you're more likely to propose hypotheses. And when you're doing qualitative research, like focus group interview, you're more likely to propose research question, because with detailed answers, you can understand why instead of what. Then you need to select your sample. Do you want to pick SFA students? What should their gender be? What should their major be? And what year in school should they be in? Or does that really matter? Let's say if you want to understand how girls use social media to compare makeup products or compare shopping options locally or online, maybe you want to focus on female students, and their major may matter as well, because students with liberal art background and students with engineer background may have different habits when it comes to online shopping. So really think about your sampling strategy. And you need 6 to 10 similar people to participate in the focus group. Ideally, they shouldn't know each other, because when we're talking in front of our friends, we are more likely to censor ourselves if we know our friends don't like certain opinions. And we would want to please them and show a better image of ourselves. So strangers can help you to stay anonymous in the focus group setting, and you want them to be similar because you want them to be comfortable talk about their own opinions. Let's say you want to study how people use social media to access political information. Maybe you want to put all the Democrats in one group and the Republican in one group, because you know they may disagree with each other on a lot of things. You don't want to create a hostile environment for your participants to talk about things. So similarity fosters discussion. It's really important here. And then determine number of groups. You really need multiple groups to confirm that what you'll find is really consistent across groups to make sure your data is valid. And then, of course, you need to consider the study mechanics. When is it going to be held? Where is it going to happen? It's a little bit harder than interview, because interview is usually one-on-one sessions. You only need a room that's big enough for 2 person. But with focus group, you have 6 to 10 people. You need to find a bigger room, but also not too big that they can't hear each other. And how are you going to record it? It's also going to be harder than interview, because you have 6 to 10 people talking over with each other. So you really need to make sure that you have multiple recording devices that work. And whether you want to offer incentive to encourage people to participate. And then you can prepare your materials. You need a consent form, let them know what this research is about, and ask them if they're willing to participate, and written down their consent. You also need a protocol, interview guide. It's very similar to what you had before for the interview method. But here we don't call it the interviewer, we call it the moderator. This is the person to moderate the whole discussion, to ask the questions and encourage them to interact with each other as well. Protocol include the welcome, introduction of the research, of course introduction of the team member as well, because you have 6 to 10 people talking about the same topic. You have one moderator, and you also have note takers, because this person needs to monitor 6 to 8 persons' behavior. This moderator won't have time to take notes. So you need note takers there. You need people to record the whole conversation. So introduction session, you should introduce all your team members. And then you need to ask them to sign the consent forms, and then you can start ask the questions on the protocol. In the end, you tell them what's your conclusion, ask them if they have any further questions, and then you thank them for their time. A few tips about the type of questions you can ask. You want to start with more general questions to specific ones. And you also want to ask important questions first, because people may get tired in the end, they don't want to talk anymore. And the number of questions varies. It really depends on the topic and depends on the real situation. If they're all very talkative, they're giving you the answer you want, you may not need a lot of probes, like follow-up questions. But if they are pretty quiet, then you really need to ask a lot of follow-up questions. Like, what do you mean? Can you explain that? Can you elaborate? Did you mean this or did you mean that? Anyone else agree? Anyone else disagree? So those are the things you need to consider. Depends on how your participants react. And the general rule is you don't want to ask more than 12 main questions. So probe questions are not main questions. Probe questions are those, what do you mean? Can you tell me more? It doesn't necessarily ask about one thing. So main questions are those questions that are specific about the research topic. Let's say if I want to study social media and people's how people use social media to access product information. I follow brand. Do they follow brand? Do they recommend a product to each other? Do they pay attention to the ads on Instagram? So those are my main questions. And then probe questions will be, what do you mean? Can you explain more? I'm pretty sure you got it. Here you go, the probing questions. And when you're conducting a focus group, you need to keep in mind, you really only need one moderator, is the leader of the focus group. This person is really, really important. It's a lot like how interviewers can affect the quality of the interview in general. The moderator can really affect the quality of focus group as well. You want this person to encourage equal participation and to stop someone from dominating the conversation. And you also want the moderator to help other people to feel comfortable. You should be the moderator himself or herself should be comfortable in front of other people to begin with and be open-minded. And you want to dress nice, but don't overdo it. You don't want to show that the moderator is so much better than the rest of the group. That's really a power dynamic. It's really hard to reverse later on. And once the power dynamic is established, it will be harder for others to open themselves up. People are more comfortable talking in front of their peers. So this is something you really need to keep in mind when you're thinking about how the moderator should dress for the focus group. Note taker, so important. When we're recording a conversation, if we only have the audio recording, we don't have the video, we miss a lot of information, because when people talk, some people nod, some people make hand gesture, some people roll their eyes, some people will just say words that may not even be identifiable on the audio recording. So you really need a note taker to take verbal notes and also physical notes. Let me go back a second. Oops, sorry. Okay, verbal notes. You need to identify when different people speak and the first few words they say, so you know who said what. Because on the audio recording, it just sounds like people are talking again. You may not be able to tell the difference in their voices. So when you're taking notes, you really draw a map based on where they sit and number them or use letter so you know who is talking at what time. And you want to take notes on the quotes that stand out, so it can save you some time when you're analyzing the data by listening to the audio recording later. And note some general conclusions or themes. And it's always a good idea to have 2 or more group members to take notes. Physical notes, like we talked about before, people are nodding, making hand gestures, and rolling their eyes. And you want to take notes on those cues as well, so you can tell whether it's a conversation that everyone agrees with the conclusion or it's a conversation that some people disagree with others. Now, setting up the room, it's a lot like interview, a little bit different because you have more people. And the moderator should have the sitting position that reinforces the leadership, but also don't be too far away. You want people to know you're in charge, but you're there to moderate the conversation, not dominating the conversation. And note takers should be present. You shouldn't hide in the corner and take notes quietly. You should introduce your note takers to everyone, and so they know why the note takers are there. Just don't be creepy. And once you have the data, once you have the recording, you have to transcribe it. There are so many tools online that can transcribe audio recording for you for free. If you can afford that or you can find those tools, please contact me or do it by yourself. It's a really good practice to transcribe your own data. And you should always include the mistakes people made. Don't correct them because that means something. You don't have to include body language in the transcript. You will have a separate file with all the notes in it. And once you are done with the transcribing part, everyone should read the transcript and identify themes. You need to be familiar with the text before you're analyzing anything, and then start creating categories based on the frequent comments, sentiments, and conclusions. And this process is not linear. You probably would read the text, come up with a few categories, and read it again, change the categories or change the quotes that belong to different categories, and then read it again. So it will take a little bit back and forth. And this process shouldn't be done by one person either. You want more people to participate in this process. And the last part is how to analyze the data. Once you have the transcript in front of you, you can use cut and paste technique. Cut and paste technique was created by old school scholars. Of course, nowadays, you don't print everything out, cut the paper with the scissors and tape them onto a different piece of paper. You just use computer, Control-C and Control-V, right? So mark the text with different categories in Excel format or in a Word document, and reclassify the themes several times if necessary. And keep a good note on the great quotes and observations. Those will be really useful in the end. And in the end, create a new document so you can show other group members how the different quotes is related, different quotes are related to the category you came up with. That's all I have for focus group. Come back later, we will talk about the other two qualitative research methods.